So, guess where we're at today? We are not live from Wisconsin. We're actually live from, oh, there she is. We're actually live from Mexico. So, happy Tuesday, We're Leader community. Thank you guys for all joining us from all around the world. If you're watching us on Twitter, welcome. If you're watching us from Twitter, YouTube, and also in the We're Live community. If you're not part of the We're Live community, make sure to go ahead and join us by simply looking in Facebook, We're Leaders. So today we're going to talk about the importance of intentional connection. Daniil and I are actually the reason why we're in Cozumel. This year we celebrate 20 years of matrimony, aka marriage. Congratulations, Daniil. And I remember when we got married, we eloped, and I was on a plane ride. It was Dallas, right, Danielle?
Yep.
Yeah, it was Dallas, and I just so happened to sit next to a pastor, and I'm like, "Wow, how long you been pastoring for?" He goes, "I don't know, 20 some years." And I go, "So I'm sure you went ahead and mentored and worked with a lot of different couples over the years. What would you say is probably some of the most important things to remember to have a successful relationship?" He goes, "Oh, that's actually pretty simple." He goes, "Make sure you make more emotional deposits versus withdrawals." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, a lot of times, especially after you're married and you've been together in a relationship for a while, even not married, is that we land up taking more than we land up giving. And what you're going to want to do is, you want to envision that your partner has this emotional bank, and you got to find the ways in which that person receives love and appreciation and put deposits into that bank, whether it be quality time with one another, acts of service, gift giving, physical touch, or words of affirmation." And he goes, "You want to make sure that bank account is very, very full. Because when you start taking those withdrawals, you don't want to go ahead and what's that called? Overdraft your account." So we're going to talk about that today. We've learned a lot of different things over 20 years of marriage. We think of now 22 years, Danielle?
Yep.
22 years. I should know that. I'm saying this live online here. But let's talk about the importance of connection, because I think, as anyone's in the pursuit of anything, to be successful in anything, whether it be your fitness, your health, you want to get to another level, your work, your business, relationships, it does take intentionality to get around to make that happen. And so Daniil and I are going to share with you some things that we learned over the years in terms of being more intentional with connection. And I remember many years ago where I was in an advertising job, and I was telling them what Daniil and I were doing. We're talking about visions and goals and stuff like that. They're like, "Sounds like you're running a business more than a relationship." I go, "Well, if it's good enough for business, why wouldn't I do the same thing in a family?" And Daniil, can you share with everyone some of your takeaways in terms of, having a common family vision and goals and importance of it?
Well, I think it's important just to understand so that we already go in different directions a lot of times anyways with the kids' activities or sports or just different things. And so different jobs or whatever it is, like we're already going in different directions. So it's like we got married for a reason. What was that reason? And it was to build a life together. And so it's one of those things, like if you're not communicating to one another what goals that you have so that you can have that support and to continue to build a life together or a vision or what your family, are you able to continue to go in the same direction?
Yeah, you make a good point. You get together, you have a friendship, a relationship for a reason. You want to build something. And I think it's easy to get distracted from that. And I can say, I don't know about you, Daniil, but I think sometimes, you have this common purpose together that you want to go ahead and achieve. And I think you can get distracted once you're achieving some of the goals. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's easy to like lose sight, like, and be excited for the other person when you see them winning and see them enjoying success. And if you're not celebrating with them and encouraging them to continue doing well, I think it's easy to kind of have that resentment, like, I let you go do this, and um, I've supported you for all this time, and to start feeling selfish in the sense of, like, you may have not been working as hard on different things to achieve success. And so you kind of start to feel like, what about me? Oh, poor me. Like, if you're not growing together and celebrating together, it's easy to kind of start to feel that pity party along the way.
And I think that's a big challenge because, when you're in the pursuit of anything, whether it be either partner, you're pursuing something, you're pouring into that. Like where you put your focus is where you're going to get your results. So how do you think a person, if they're in that situation of, what, hey, their spouse is going in this direction, they're kicking butt, taking names and numbers, and they're growing, you see that excitement, and all of a sudden you start feeling, what's the word, left behind. Like how do you deal with that?
Well, I think it's important to talk and to communicate that, and I think that's where it's important to have that open lines of communication, and where you're having that time to connect with one another. Um, I think that also it's important, like we talked a lot about, to check your mindset. Like, where are you in your relationship? Like, what is your mindset of the relationship? And are you continuing to grow yourself to continue being that support that you need to be, or to continue to move forward and not let that person kind of hold you back because they're making you feel bad about whatever. So just really, I think the biggest thing there is just having that open lines of communication and continuing to talk with one another.
Yeah, I think too, in terms of when you say that open lines of communication, you got to be intentional with it. I mean, it's easy not to be intentional with things when things are going well. I think, you're at top of your game, kids are winning, everyone's winning, and I think it's easy to get away from intentional time. And what do I mean by that? So if you run a sales team, you might do something called a daily huddle. And I do this actually not only with my sales teams, I also do it with the teams that I coach athletically. And honestly, dude, I think the 45-second going around the horn at the beginning of practice and then unpacking it, it's one of the things that the players look the most forward to. Like they get excited to go ahead and share because I think we all want someone to witness our journey. We all want someone to share things with. And I think in terms of, as couples be longer in relationships, friendships, work, I think it's easy to get away from that intentional time
Mhm.
to hear what the other person's got going on. Like, what are some things that you felt that we've done over the years that, hey, you know what, got us back on track? Because believe me, guys, 20 years, it's not all unicorns and rainbows. Okay. It takes work. Um, what do you think are some things that you've seen that we've done that has actually helped us stay more intentionally connected?
Well, I think just sharing with one another, like, what our goals are, and understanding like where we fall in the pursuit of helping one another in those goals. And so I think just doing that, like, where we've sat down as a family, shared what our yearly goals are, follow up with that on a quarterly basis, just kind of seeing where we are in pursuit of it, even weekly. Um, I know a lot of times that for us, like, our weeks may kind of run into one another, but like intentionally just being like, okay, like, we don't have anything this night, whether it's nice for us to do it on a Sunday night, but at the same time, like, we may have stuff going on. But so saying Wednesday night we have this open, like, let's take a look at where we're at, just to have that time to sit down face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and talk with one another, because it's so easy to get lost in the week to week, day to day stuff going on. And then also, I think, um, finding activities that we can continue to do together. And so, like, I know we go on a yearly Christmas trip together, just to have that nothing else going on except family time and that time together. And you, whatever, I mean, it could be camping in the summer for some people, which isn't something that we would normally do. But I think,
Hey, I
just
ventured into it, like actually getting like a motorhome, maybe.
I think just something that the family like that you used to do, and that it was a lot of fun doing it. Just going back and like looking at that stuff, like, hey, it was so great that we were doing this, or um, even as like for our extended family, just once a month getting together because it's so easy to live close to one another and not even spend that time together. And for a lot of our family, they're far away from us. And now we have some with us. And it's like just really being intentional in scheduling out that time and just whatever reason other than to get together, just to do it.
You make a good point there because I know when I'm scheduling time with family here, we actually get together. Otherwise, we can say, hey, we need to get together more, and it just doesn't happen unless it gets scheduled on the book. So I think intentional connection means, you got to schedule it. So here's a question then, because I think we've gone through this period of time in our lives where you got away from intentional connection, right? You may got away from knowing each other's goals and things that you want to achieve and whatnot. What would you say are some warning signs for people that, you know what, hey, you need to do some intentional connections?
I think the time that you are together, all you do is fight with one another. I guess I don't know a better term for it, but like you're arguing about something or it's constant, like feel like it's nagging time. Like all you do is complain about something. I think are big signs that there's there hasn't been that intentional time to just be able to connect one on one with one another.
Yeah, I think that's a big point. So when we talk about intentional connection, if you're actually taking time to sit down and talk with someone, and all you can think of is negative things to talk about, or like, not talking at all, I think that's just a sign that, hey, it's time for some intentional connection. And I think sometimes too is that, okay, there's the people that, okay, you know what, I haven't been intentionally connecting with my significant other or my employees or my coworkers or friends enough. Um, and then this could be this trepidation of what am I going to say to them? What are we going to talk about? How do you deal with that?
I don't know. How do you deal with it?
I think part of it is like I think it's like you got all these different thoughts that you want to talk about, these things that you want to ask. I think you just do it. I think someone can preface it a little bit. Hey, you know what? I've got a lot of things in my mind that I want to talk about, and I don't know if there's ever a perfect time for anything. And I think the right time. I guess if really bad things are happening, maybe not do it at the time. But I think one of the things is that if you want intentional connection, communication is based on trust. I think that's part of it. I think it's, if you can go ahead and ask your employee, hey, how are things at work? Oh, they're fantastic, boss. Things are going great. Then 2 weeks later, they give you a resignation. You're like, whoa, I thought things were great. I think in order to have more intentional connection, there's got to be trust established there. So one thing I've learned is that when someone comes to you and they want to share something on their mind, and it may be a problem that they have with you, not get defensive. I think that's something easier said than done, especially if you haven't been doing that intentional connection. When it comes to developing that trust, what's one of the things that you've learned that, hey, you know what? I may not have been doing this, but in order to be a better communicator and to really share what's going on before it becomes like an issue, I got to talk about it.
Well, I just think owning up to your responsibility and not blaming the other person for the things that are going on, because I think sometimes, I mean, obviously setting the time as a two-way street, like I can approach it as well as you can approach it. So just really owning your part of it and not blaming the other person all the time for the things that are going on.
So what you're saying is, okay, you see something's wrong with it, like you literally want to point the finger at them. I think a lot of times when people just want to point the finger and blow up at someone, is because they haven't had intentional time, right? Their emotional bank is on negative withdrawal. The bank is calling over and saying you've overdrafted. And I think too is like, hey, asking yourself the questions of what part do I play in this issue right now, this challenge? I think, and that's the reason why you should have intentional time scheduled. I know when we do it intentionally and we're on a streak with it, things are fantastic, but it's easy to get lazy with it. I don't know if lazy is the right term, right? How to get back on track if you're not doing enough intentional time, do you think?
Well, I think sticking to time that you do have together, or finding it where you can, and just building from there. I don't think that everyone's schedule is always perfect, and we can say that every single Sunday we're going to do this, because it doesn't always work that way. There's traveling, there's different things going on. So I just think whenever you have an open night, or an open time, whether it's driving to the gym, talking about stuff, or sitting down at the dinner table, because there's many nights that we aren't able to even sit down at the table together to eat. And just when we do have that opportunity, talking to one another, maybe on the way to work or on the way home from work. I know a lot of times, yes, you're probably thinking about getting prepped for the day or decompressing from the day, but maybe you have a few extra minutes just to like say hi. Like whatever time that you can invest into your relationship is better than nothing. And I think that it's just using that with the mindset of, I want to continue to build our relationship, versus we never have time to do any of this stuff. So it doesn't, I think one of the things we were looking at talking next week is about that work-life harmony, because really you have so many hours in a day, and it's never going to be 50-50. You're never going to spend 10 hours of your day at work and 10 hours with your spouse being able to talk. Obviously, that 100% doesn't add up to anything, So it's like you just have to use the time with the intention of being straight, like to use it to build your relationship.
I think you made a good point there. It's like, do you want to make things better? Right? I mean, and like you said in the beginning, like you got together for a reason. You developed that friendship for a reason. You did this job for a reason. You got married for a reason. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget those reasons. And you can either just let things just go by, the sun set and rise, or say, I want to be an amazing husband. I want to be an amazing wife. I want to be an amazing friend. I want to be an amazing son. And actually having that intentional thing, like part of my daily plan each day, I make an outcome for how I want to be personally and professionally. And I think there's power in that intentional focus around things, because it's easy to accept status quo. So we talked about a few things. Number one, scheduling that intentional time. If you haven't been doing it for a while, I think some of you guys may be watching this right now, and you might have been in a relationship for a while. Like, you know what? Gosh, I'd like to have a date night, but I don't know what the hell we talk about. I got an idea for you. That. Say that. I don't really know what the hell we're going to talk about, because we haven't talked. That's where that communication, trust, and I would venture to say maybe the other person is felt the same way. I don't know. What do you think?
It's possible. Yep.
They may be going, you know what? I don't know. But tell me more about that. Like, what do we mean? We don't have nothing to talk about. We have all these things going on. So I think the other thing is, what about this one in terms of intentional connection? Not being afraid to really share what's on your heart.
Well, I think that comes back to the being able to trust the other person and not be defensive, and just truly just sharing. Because I think it's easy to talk to other people. I'm sure that some people sit at the hairdresser and unload everything there. Like, why wouldn't you share that with your spouse or significant other in that sense. Like, what trust do you have with that hairdresser that you don't have in your marriage? I think is a little bit questionable. I mean, obviously, if you're not able to have that conversation, then why are you married? Like, I just think sometimes we put the burden of our thoughts and things that we're going through on complete strangers, but yet we're not willing to share that with the person that we're with. And that's who most likely we should be having that conversation with. I know.
But that can be scary though. Don't you think? Because don't you think sometimes people, at least sometimes with me, like I'll journal things out. Like when I got something really pressing in mind, like okay, I gotta talk to you about it. I think a lot of times because we've gotten better at least I've gotten better at communication. There was times I'll be honest, like there was times like I didn't want to share, right? Because I was scared out of my mind, or I was worried about what you were gonna think, or I wanted to quote unquote protect you. Um, and I think that's where you guys got to be understand that you know what you're a human being. So let's talk about that then a little bit. Because I think a lot of times people do that. They'll tell something to someone else versus talking to the person that they're with. And sometimes there's value in talking things out loud with somebody else too. Get out your mind first time. But I think it's important that whoever you're talking to is not encouraging a negative behavior.
Right.
Or we're trying to paint someone else in a different picture. And like, no, okay, here's the facts. Here's what's going on. So I think that's another thing is like, I think you can't be afraid of sharing what you want to share, but I think you want to make sure you're not sharing things when you're ultimate too happy. They say, don't make a promise when you're really, really happy. I thought that was an interesting thing I read. Or don't say something when you're really angry. So I think there's certain parameters that people can have when having conversations on things. So intentional connection, schedule it, be open with communication. I think you also need to put parameters in terms of, okay, I'm going to share something with you. I just really need you just to listen and not respond. How does that help in communication? Because I think sometimes when people are having communications, the other person is literally not, they're hearing, but they're not listening. What does setting parameter, like almost forecasting that conversation, help make a better conversation?
Well, if you're just wanting to, sometimes I think you just need to like brain dump and emotional dump, like you don't need anything fixed. Because I think sometimes it's just a thought and a feeling that's been pent up. And we talk about journaling, but I think also it's important to talk to people, to have that that connection with one another, and just to have a human looking at you and being able to feel your emotion with you, not necessarily fix whatever is being shared.
It's like, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. I just came up with that right now. I probably got it from somewhere, but no. So we talked a lot about significant others, talked about work, but what about children?
Well, I think it's very important to set that up because I think what's really sad, I think if anyone follows the news, is all these college students, freshmen, sophomores, that went through this really hard pandemic and whatever was going on, all these mental health issues. And I think it's very important to work to keep those lines of communication open with your kids because they go through a million more emotions than we do. And I know hormones and whatever's going on. Like, I think it's very important to help make sure they understand you're there to talk to them. You're not there to like lecture them. And if they're feeling different things going on or just to talk with them, like to make sure that they understand that. I know that not every kid's going to want to talk about stuff, but I think just knowing that you're there. I know that I've read things where there's, kids are out at a party. If you need a ride home, you just text, no questions asked. I will come get you. There may be consequences later, but we're not going to discuss it right now. Just so that you can continue to build that trust and that openness with your children as well.
Yeah. You know, being a coach, going back to our like little daily huddles before practices, I remember one time there was this one player, and we're going through our huddles thing, and the player is like, "I really like this because I don't get to talk to anybody." And it's not that parents do this on purpose. I know. I mean, there's times in which I wasn't there completely like present, you know, and that's why you got to be intentional with it. So here are some questions that I ask our son at the end of each day. And I did this, Neil and I would do this with one another as well. And I tell you what, like, it may feel awkward doing these questions, but I tell you, I learned so much about Danielle and things going on her day and my son. So here they are in talking about intentional connection. Number one, you know, what are you proud of yourself for doing today? Or what do you love about yourself today that you did? Number two, what did you learn? I think every day we learn something. And number three, what are you grateful for? And from those three questions alone, and then that fourth one I'll ask occasionally, what made you laugh today? So that's for kids. And I tell you what, I know there's days in which my son is so looking forward to answering those questions. I think for spouses, you know, what do you love that you did today? You know, what are you grateful for? What do you love and or respect about your partner? And what do you love about yourselves? I know when we start doing that, Danielle, I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, should we just do this every day? No, let's do this every day. And, you know, I think it does a lot of things. When we start doing it as a husband and wife, how did that help you?
Well, I think, we did it at the end of the day right before bed, and I think it helps just to have that connection before you go to bed. Like, you were able to at least unload something that happened through the day, even though you may be sleeping 5 minutes later. Like, at least you had that few minutes to have that little conversation with one another.
Yeah. And for me, it's like I would learn things like having your days, like, oh, I didn't know that happened. Oh, really? Like it made me so much curious and make me more excited to learn about things. And some of you guys might be looking for a little starter. There's a book called The Complete Book of Questions right here. I got it right here. You brought it with. Yeah. And it's just different conversation starters for different kinds of occasions they can talk about. Like here's one. How would you summarize the highs and lows of this past week? You know, here's one, Danielle. What was the best or worst job you ever had? I'm gonna ask you that question right now. What's the best or worst job you ever had?
The best job is probably being a wife and a mom. The worst job is probably having clean up dog poop.
You know, I wonder if you were going to say that. See, this is where you can see how much in alignment you are with the other person. All right. Oh, here's one, and I'm going to say this because it's why not? It's for question number 400. When did you last have fresh flowers in your home, and what was the occasion?
I had flowers last week just because.
Just because it's emotional thoughts. As we finish up here, Danielle, what would you say some final thoughts? I mean, we talked about scheduling time, being open with that person, and taking responsibility, having some intentional questions that you ask. Final thoughts when it comes to the importance of intentional connection.
I think it's important to do it. Like, if you feel like you're kind of stuck in a place, like your relationship is kind of stalled out. I know we had all this time together in 2020. In 2021, kind of like everything kind of started to shift back into the other direction. And now 2022, we're like even more shifted and things are more open and things are running again. And just remember, like, shouldn't take a pandemic and things going on to make you have that time together.
Yeah. Make it a 411 situation versus a 911 situation is my thought.
Mhm.
And just be intentional with it. Like, don't, yeah, that's a very good point. So we appreciate you guys all for joining us today, whether you're watching us live now or watching us later. And we're here, going to be here again next week at 12:01 p.m. Central. And we're going to talk about that work-life balance thing. And is it really work-life balance? So until next week, I am Tony J. Allen, joined by the wonderful and beautiful and amazing
Danielle.
Danielle. Hey, go ahead and be a rare leader. Rise up, connect, collaborate, contribute to the world. Till next time, onward and upwards.